we're done. I have watched that video literally 100 times. It always still gives me goosebumps. I love the energy, and it reflects really well on the energy of South by Southwest. I'll also say it's probably the easiest way to take in South by Southwest. You don't have to worry about a hotel. You don't have to worry about traffic. It's over in 5 minutes, and you can go on with your business. At any rate, I want to talk a little bit about the growth of interactive and compare that to this concept of peace, and then we'll move into the peace thing. Martin mentioned we had 25,000 registrants. We actually had our 30,000 registrants for interactive in 2013. That was our biggest year ever, which was great. I'm not sure how much more we can grow, but we maxed out most of the hotel occupancy in Austin, although in 2015 you've seen this big construction site on Congress. That'll be a jade of the merit. It'll allow us to grow a little more. Overall, overall in terms of interactive music and film, the economic impact of South by Southwest in 2012 was about $190 million. That means hotel revenues, taxi revenues, restaurants, people buying souvenirs, all that kinds of things to Austin. That number will be bigger in 2013. I would assume it will top 200 million. We haven't finished our study, post-event survey yet, but again, it would be close to 200, maybe 210 million for 2013. In terms of context, a Super Bowl pulls in about 450 million. So we are about a third of the Super Bowl at this point. We are the biggest, strangely, this event, which started with a bunch of hippies and people with Mac Plus computers, is the biggest economic generator in Austin now, aside from UT football, which covers 6 or 7 home games and overall draws a little more. But pretty phenomenal that how much that's grown. There is a great slide I have that I normally show at this point, which shows the hockey stick of interactive growth. And it also shows that in 2008, when the economy was tanking everywhere, we had one of our biggest years and biggest growth spurts ever with about 25 or 30% growth. I am not showing that slide today because I always think that there's a real trap of focusing on numbers as opposed to focusing on other aspects of the event. Our goal, which I preach to myself, to my staff, to whoever will listen, is always to be better and not bigger. And feel like if we can continue to improve, get better, that the bigger part will take care of itself. And that is definitely happening. To that end, I will say that peace. Yes, peace is always better than turmoil. So what is peace? Okay, peace is what I think our approach to community management is at South by Southwest Interactive, and let me go through this letter by letter. Peace, the P in peace stands for patience leads to profits. Interactive, the part that I manage, was traditionally the smallest portion of South by Southwest Week. And by smallest portion, that's a nice way to say it. We were typically the redheaded stepchild of the 3 events. I can remember 15 years ago wondering why we were doing this thing. It just didn't seem to be growing. It didn't seem to have any momentum, and was frustrated. Wanted to be a part of something that was getting more buzz, and we just weren't getting it. That said, we began our current growth spurt in about 2004, and have had 10 solid years of at least 10 to 20% growth. What were the factors in that growth? Factor number 1, startups and social media happen. And in some cases, startups that are social media. Probably our biggest turning point for South by Southwest was Twitter, which essentially started here in 2007 at South by Southwest. I say essentially, the fine folks at Twitter are nice enough to credit South by Southwest as being where they launched, and that has helped us a ton. That said, they were actually out 2 or 3 months before South by Southwest started, but South by Southwest is where they got their big push. 2009, Foursquare launched here. We've had various other startups that have launched here, and that's helped us a whole lot. But again, the biggest single factor in our growth is Twitter. People seeing how much Twitter has grown and wanting to be a part of the same circumstances that helped launch that. And I'll also mention in terms of the Twitter stuff, if you were here in 2007 and you saw Twitter, you would have no way, I mean, not in your wildest imagination could you have imagined that 6 or 7 years later, it would be this platform that the President of the United States is using to, accept his re-election, that type of stuff. It was one more thing that you thought, wow, that's pretty cool. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. And that's one of the traps of the event, or the strange things about the event, is you never know what that cool band is that you saw. Will they make it in 2 or 3 years, or will it be just another band that, had sounded great, South by Southwest, but really didn't do much. Factor number 2 in terms of our growth is that geeks became the cool kids. I remember, again, 10 or 15 years ago when we weren't growing at all, and lamenting to my family and my friends, whoever would listen, there's just no way that this computer-related event, this tech-related event, can compete even within our own company. I mean, we've got musicians, rock stars, film stars, celebrities coming to these other events. All I've got here is, these geeks. Who cares? Well, the culture changed. The culture has changed. The culture continues to change. Geeks have become the rock stars and the celebrities. We had a movie come out on Friday about interning at Google. People covers Mark Zuckerberg's wedding. When Steve Jobs dies, his death is covered like the death of John Lennon. So again, you have this whole cultural shift, and I think a lot of that plays into, again, point number 1, startups and this whole mythology of entrepreneurism and how the geeks, the visual creatives, have helped push that forward. I guess the overall point here is that, 10 years ago, it would have been easy for my boss to pull the plug, or 15 years ago, it would have been easy for my boss to pull the plug on what Interactive was. It would have been easy for me to pull the plug, and I very much wanted to. But even in our hyper-connected, hyper-quick world where we are now, slow growth is good growth. It certainly helped for Interactive. We had this very vibrant music event that was paying the bills. And the point is there that gave us, 5 years to 10 years of figuring out what we were doing and finally getting the voice. And once we got that voice, we began to grow. So again, slow growth is good growth. Slow organic growth. One of the, flip sides to that is that, we do all, I think, in this age in which we live, expect things to happen immediately. You may or may not have heard that we are now launching an event in Las Vegas in August, called South by Southwest B2B. And the goal is that this is a much smaller event than what we do in Austin. But certainly one of our biggest challenges is going to be managing those expectations. And when people come to Las Vegas and say, well, why aren't there 30,000 people here? And trying to message to them that this is by design. We want it to be small initially, and if it's small initially, you can figure out its voice, you can figure out what it needs to be, and grow larger. So again, the P of peace is patience leads to profit. E is certainly something that I think everyone in this room is probably familiar with and probably can tell me much more about than I can tell you, but early momentum is crucial. And I'm going to frame this E point within this concept of the South by Southwest panel picker. The panel picker is something that we use at this point to pull in the bulk of our programming. It is patterned after an online t-shirt company that was originally based in Chicago and now is based in Boulder called Threadless. What Threadless does is it has designers send in designs for t-shirts. These t-shirts are posted online. The community votes on which t-shirt designs they like most. Whatever t-shirt design for that particular month gets the most votes is in fact made into a t-shirt. That t-shirt is marketed. It's a real interesting way, unique way to test market things and find the audience. We had done a promotion with Threadless in about 2005 and had huge buy-in. We never had any kind of buy-in on a promotion like this before. So the idea was, can we do something like this with panel programming? with invoking the community more to give us ideas for panel programming. So we invented, quote unquote, designed this thing called the Southwest Panel Picker. What it is a two-stage process. First stage is people send in ideas for panels or for solo presentations. And then the next stage is those ideas are posted online. Anyone with an internet connection can vote and comment on which ideas they like. And again, this helps us get a ton of our programming. The positives of the panel picker are that it puts the programming into the hands of, the bulk of programming in the hands of experts who know that particular field. 15 years ago when there was Programming Interactive, I could say, well, let's do a panel on PR. I can go read a magazine about it and maybe, highlight some names in the magazine, and I'll call those people up and get them to do this panel. But with the panel picker, the person who's a PR expert, emails us an idea. We accept the idea. They know the people in the industry, so we're going to leverage that talent, and it's been a very good thing for us. The growth of the panel picker has very much paralleled the growth of Interactive. The first year we did the panel picker was 2007, I believe. We had 500 entries. Last year's panel picker, 2013 panel picker, had 3,500 entries. So every year that number has increased a lot. I think it's helped us improve our programming a lot. That said, it's definitely not a perfect system. Funny little story here. In 2012, we had an idea that came in from this little social media company. The idea got, I think, all of 3 votes from the public. No one on the advisory board liked it. No one on staff liked it. We sent them one of our letters that say, thanks for submitting an idea. Unfortunately, we can't accept your idea, but we hope you'll come to the event anyway. This little social media company was something you may have heard of called Pinterest. So in about December, we realized that we declined this thing that had tons and tons of buzz. We were able to recontact them and tell them that it was a clerical error, that they had sent a rejection letter. We had them come and speak at the event, and they drew 2,000 people. So again, it's not a perfect system in any shape, form, or fashion, but it does help us a lot. The 2 most important things function from panel picker, that said, are first of all, it connects us with our community, and it creates this community. We have people emailing us to be on panels, whereas before, that whole relationship was I was emailing them, now they're asking us. And we get lots of great ideas that way. We get lots of ideas that aren't so great. Either way, we've got tons of people who want to be involved in the event that we can transition those over to registrants and to participate in other ways. Even more important is that we create buzz for South by Southwest in July and August. And typically we had no buzz at all. July, there's buzz because people are submitting ideas. August, there's buzz because people have submitted an idea. They're emailing, they're texting, they're tweeting their friends to vote for my idea. So the community is doing all this marketing for us. And again, this is happening in August, where it typically didn't happen until January or February. My experience with events, which, I'm sure your experience as well, and whatever you've done, is that the sooner you can start that buzz going at this end, the higher it's going to end up back there. So if we start this buzz in August, it goes way, way higher by March versus where before we had started that buzz in November, December, January, February, it did not go that high. So again, early momentum is crucial to the success. Early engagement with the community is crucial to our success. A for peace is acknowledge your failures. South by Southwest has made every mistake possible. Most of these mistakes were made 2, 3, 4, 5 times. That's part of the game. Or I wish it wasn't part of the game, but we've done lots of good things and lots of not so good things. I don't think I'm telling you guys anything you don't know, but own your mistakes, and the community forgives those mistakes, or generally forgives those mistakes. 3 very high-profile mistakes that we've made that are relatively recent. 2008, we were lucky enough to get Mark Zuckerberg as a keynote speaker. This was right when Facebook was beginning to take off. We were very happy to have him involved. Unfortunately, it turned out to be this horrible, horrible debacle. He was very young, not a very good speaker at that point. The interviewer wasn't very good. People were leaving the keynote in droves. What should have been this great moment for us. In fact, it turned out to be a pretty good moment because it was so bad it was getting lots of publicity as being the worst keynote ever. But the point is that I think we did a pretty good job of immediately owning up to that, saying that we goofed, we should have prepared this better, and turning what was a negative into a relatively positive. In 2012, we had a 2-hour line for people to pick up their badges. That wasn't a good thing. We owned that and improved that a lot in 2013. One of our ongoing problems, particularly in 2013, is the event has gotten so big that there are long lines to get into the panels, and often people wait in line for an hour and don't get in, and that's not a good situation. We've done a pretty good job of addressing that, and we'll improve on that for 2014. So, on a larger level, I think that South by Southwest is very focused on innovation, whether in terms of the content or in terms of the event itself. And if you're going to innovate, sometimes you will fail. That's part of the innovation process. That's a good thing. The point is not to discourage that innovation. When you do fail, acknowledge those failures. That's the A piece. C, customer service creates customer advocates. One of my big heroes is Tony Hsieh of Zappos. Anyone ordered shoes from Zappos? Yes. Tony is now doing something in Las Vegas called the Downtown Project, which is one of the reasons we're doing an event in Las Vegas. Tony was a keynote speaker in South by Southwest 2009, gave a great presentation. I'm also a fan of a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk. He initially did Wine TV, he's written several books. He is like the Tony Robbins of the internet world, just incredibly energetic speaker. And he gets on stage and he just is, so energetic. He typically, before his presentation starts, he stands at the door, he welcomes everyone into the room. He's just one of these guys who you don't want to like, but he's got so much energy and enthusiasm that you end up converting to his ideas. These two folks very much inspired what we call our feedback project. And what that is, with my staff interactive, which is about 20 people. In April, immediately after the event, I assigned each people to read 300 feedback emails from registrants. We end up getting about 3,000 of these, so math kind of works out there. And each person is assigned to email back at least 30 of these people, and the formula is at least 20 of them have to be people who were very, very unhappy with their experience in South by Southwest. Hated it, had something go wrong, never coming back. This is the worst part of my life, worst week of my life, yada, yada, yada. What I have found, and again, this is not brain surgery here, but in a lot of the times when you email these people who are really, really unhappy, they are totally psyched to know that someone actually read their complaints and someone is taking their complaints seriously. Even if you say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what we can do to improve the situation, but I'm just sorry that you didn't have a great time here." And my concept here is that anyone who is angry enough to write a long email about how much you suck, you can pretty quickly turn that anger, that hate into love. And you turn your critics into champions. Again, you've got this, or we've got this, all this data. We've got all these people who've emailed us. Many times their feedback is entirely valid. Sometimes they just didn't understand the event. But again, addressing them is one thing that we've used to grow a lot. And particularly, this is important in this age of social media, that you email someone, say, "We're sorry. How can we make this better? We appreciate your suggestions." You're like, wow, tweet about it, Facebook about it, that helps us a lot. Another technique here is that I have an advisory board for South by Southwest, and often when I find someone who has tons of complaints, why don't you be on the advisory board? Make the solution, make everything better that way. So again, we've grown our advisory board quite a lot that way, with lots of people who are big critics and who have turned into advocates for us. The last point of this piece acronym is encourage massive creativity. Newsflash, South by Southwest Interactive is not a technology event. Technology is the language these people speak, but what we really are is a platform for a very, very creative community. And the creative community is certainly what gives us our strength. The best ideas typically come from the community, and implementing those ideas has helped us get a lot better. So again, what we try to do, particularly with interactive, is just encourage this massive creativity. Someone comes to us with an idea of something very strange and different to do. Okay, well let's try that. That seems pretty interesting. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but it's something new that can help push us forward. One of the other interesting aspects here is there's a frequent tension at South by Southwest between what we call official events and what are unofficial events. By unofficial events, in previous years we've had people, for instance, do panels at the Four Seasons, whereas all of our programming is happening at the Austin Convention Center across the street. Now, we've solved that problem by Four Seasons is now one of our official venues, but you have this unofficial stuff going on. And as a conference organizer or as an organizer, I think my goal is always to try to pull this unofficial stuff in. As well, I think it's always important to remember that that unofficial stuff is reflective of a very healthy ecosystem. And again, a healthy and creative ecosystem is what makes this CEC, which is Career Enhancing Connections, which is what we specialize in. So again, it's P's recap. P, patience leads to profits. E, early momentum is crucial. A, acknowledge mistakes and failures. C, customer service creates customer advocates. And E, encourage massive creativity. So how does this relate to you? Well, South by Southwest, certainly a unique event. It's in a unique city. It's this unique set of circumstances. So, and organizing an event is probably different in some ways than doing PR or branding or agency work for a client. So, you know, maybe we're completely unique. But I would say in many ways we're not unique what we do. I mean, again, in my first slide I talked about how I don't like to be called director. I'm more like to be called community manager. And I would think that, or I would offer that we are all, in a sense, community managers. When you are working with clients, you're managing a particular community. When you are working with the press, you're managing that particular community. When you have something go wrong, you need to manage that message, you are working with the community. When you have something go right and you want to accentuate or emphasize that how that is working, you are working with a particular community. So again, we are all, I think, in a sense, community managers. I think that learning and thinking and brainstorming on new and improved ways to engage with that community is certainly one of our keys to success. Along those lines, I would encourage everyone in this audience, if you haven't read a book that was published about 15 years ago called The Clue Train Manifesto, check that book out. It's a short book, but still kind of serves as a Bible for the immediate community. It's short enough that I've actually skimmed the thing many, many times, not fully read it, but one of the most important quotes from that book, which I always talk about, I love the quote, it's short and easy to remember, are markets are conversations. It's something I always preach to my staff, I always talk about all the time, invited to speak to people, markets are conversations. What does that mean? A, the more you can converse with your audience, with your registrants, with your attendees, with your customers, the stronger your product is. B, the more you can get your audience, your registrants, your attendees, your customers to talk about what you're doing, the stronger you are as well. So again, markets are conversations. I love that quote. Lastly, I want to talk briefly about the 2014 South by Southwest Interactive Festival. Again, I talked about early buzz being good buzz. To that end, we start accepting panel proposals. Panel proposals will have the panel picker from July 1st to July 26th. Panel picker voting runs August 19th to September 6th. Again, that's when anyone can log on to the South by Southwest website, search for ideas, vote for which ideas you think are good, which ideas you don't think are good, comment on ideas. Registration for 2014 opens August 1st. I mentioned that because registering early is the cheapest way to attend. It also offers the best selection of hotel rooms. Again, hotel rooms are a huge, huge commodity, limited commodity during South by Southwest. This particular hotel for 2014 will probably sell out in 1 or 2 days. So again, this is a challenge. We have helped to create this huge market via Airbnb in Austin, but again, some people are not Airbnb fans, so if you want to get a good hotel, I encourage you to register early. The bulk of programming for the 2014 event will be announced on October 14th. The event is Friday, March 7th through Tuesday, March 11th. And lastly, even if you can't attend in person, you can follow much of South by Southwest virtually, either by watching the Twitter stream. Most of the keynotes are streamed live. You can watch those and still get a lot out of the event that way. Okay, contact information, South by Southwest website, SXSW.com. Interactive is /interactive. Again, my email address, hugh@sxsw.com, by Twitter, and at Hugh_W_Forrest. On that note, we have a few more minutes and would love to have any kind of questions, ideas, brainstorm, comments, whatnot from anybody in the audience. Thanks again for inviting me to speak. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you guys today.
Evolved over many years, whether you feel like and your team feels like there's pretty widespread, accurate understanding for the full scope of what the full event is, or whether you feel like nationwide there's still kind of a limited view of really what it is and what it offers. And did everybody hear the question?
Sure. The question was, as the event has grown, do I feel like people still understand what the event is, correct?
The full scope.
Full scope of the event.
You may think it's just a music event or just put it in a certain category.
I think that, great question. I think that one of our ongoing weaknesses is marketing and messaging. I think lots of people don't understand all the things that South by Southwest covers. You know, for a long time we had this tag, or we still do, I think, for interactive as spring break for geeks. And that's cool, but we also kind of want to mention that people are doing real business here and getting things done. It's not just one big party. And you know, as big as South by Southwest is, with as many things that we have going on, it is real hard. It is extremely hard, extremely difficult, extremely challenging to get one particular message through there, emphasize one message over another. So, I mean, that's a long way of saying I don't think we do a particularly good job on that. I think that, you know, in many ways, South by Southwest is like that parable of the elephant and the blind man, or the camel and the blind man, that everyone sees a different part of the elephant or the camel, and that's what they think it is. So to some people, it is this massive party. To some people, it's this way where they can get 6 months of work out of meeting people here, 6 months of jobs, 6 months of contracts. I would love it if we could do a better job at getting this crystal clear message through, but I would say that one of the downsides of having this huge community of advocates is this community has their own messages too, and many times those are stronger, they get that message through stronger than we do. So I think that's an ongoing challenge for us.
Could you tell us a little bit about how you run your community management, how big your team is, and how you kind of divide up the responsibilities of communicating with your markets?
Sure. The total team for Interactive, that's the easiest part of that question, is we've got about 20 people now. We've grown considerably over the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, 5 years ago we were 5 people. It was much easier to do this community management stuff when we were smaller and when we had fewer registrants, because we could simply communicate more directly with people, and the scale wasn't so high. I think that I'm pretty comfortable with empowering everyone on my team to talk to people, try to always engage them positively, email people, engage them positively. When they have criticisms, try to engage them positively. Again, one of my models and one of my heroes here is Tony Hsieh from Zappos. And you may have heard one of these famous stories from Zappos is that, you know, they have the customer service representatives that when you call them on the phone, they will, you know, order your pizza if you need to and all this stuff. And one of the famous stories there is they have a month-long training program. And 2 weeks into that training program, they offer everyone in the training program $2,000, I think it is, if they want to quit. And they want people there who want to do this. And so they're offering people money to quit and do something else. Now, I don't think, I know that we don't do that at South by Southwest, but again, I think we create this environment, or you want to create an environment where you're comfortable with anybody in your team talking to anybody and engaging them in a positive way. I will say that that's incredibly difficult because as we get close to the event, we're doing long hours, we're dealing with, you know, various problems, and you know, there are times when you just want to scream at whatever, but the more positively you engage people, encourage them, tell them that they have a great idea of doing panels at the airport, but maybe that won't work in 2014, maybe we do that in 2015 instead, the stronger we do. So, you know, again, my idea there is pretty basic, that you just have trust in your people to be able to engage and interact as much as possible.
You mentioned that the event has been so successful that there's a shortage of hotel rooms and Airbnb is got a big market here. Do you ever anticipate there'll be a point where the event will just become too big for Austin, or there are other limits that might make it just not as rewarding? And when you think about that, what are some of the solutions that come to mind?
Well, certainly one of the solutions is trying to grow this event in Las Vegas and hoping that some of that growth can push over to Las Vegas. We have had many long, contentious debates, arguments, conversations, discussions, I don't want to phrase that, internally about whether we cap the event, if you limit it, if you say, okay, we're not selling more registrations, and we've always decided that you don't cap it because people are still going to come to Austin to be part of all the unofficial stuff, part of all that buzz. You're still going to, you know, you're going to face these scaling problems. You're just not going to monetize with people who can't register anymore. I do think that, or I do know that with the growth of the event, it's changed the event a lot. There are people who, you know, were here 10 years ago as registrants who simply say it's too big for me now. It's not the thing I want to go to anymore. That said, for every one of those, we're getting 2 new people who want to experience the event. So it is a real challenge. I mean, there's always a part of me that's very sad when someone who I've made a friendship with who says, you know, I don't want to come to this year. I want to take a year off. But I also will say that, you know, it would be a pretty boring event if it was the same people every year, if it was the same exact panels every year, if it was the same exact structure. It would be like high school reunion every year, and who wants that? I also think, and I'm not saying this too cynically, but it's, you know, it's like that Yogi Berra quote, that restaurant is so popular no one goes there anymore. You know, I mean, you see that a lot in the community, watching the Twitter sphere or whatnot. I'm not going anymore, no one goes anymore. Well, you know, actually this is our biggest year, so someone's coming. And we've been lucky enough that those new people have come. They may not be creative in quite the same way that those original people came, but they are creative in their own way. And I think that's one of the things that we always try to emphasize and are always happy about, is that we have this very creative audience coming to Austin for South by Southwest. And as long as we can continue to have that creativity here, I think the event will be generally okay.
But, so what's the competition? What's the next new thing that's going to get in the way of the continued success in your opinion?
Well, in terms of competition, if you're asking about other events, you know, I think that what TED does is great, amazing. You know, TED is much more curated, a much more curated event, whereas ours is much more kind of open source chaos. TED has done certainly a great job with their video content, branding it that way. In terms of obstacles for our continued growth, again, hotels are a challenge in Austin. Transportation to Austin is a challenge. Transportation within Austin is a challenge during the event. I mean, it is, as you saw in the video, it is lots and lots of people here. And that's great for a lot of things. It means that you can meet a lot more people here that you want to do business with, that can help your career, but it's also has certainly lots of downsides. So the scalability factor with any community, whether it's online or in person, scaling that community is always a challenge. And I think that's, you know, our biggest ongoing challenge for 2014 and beyond.
So what's your vision for the Las Vegas event, and how does that differ from the event?
The Las Vegas event is very geared towards startups. Startups, as I mentioned, is one of the things that's helped push the growth of Interactive, so it's very geared towards startups. As I mentioned, Tony Hsieh, he is now doing this thing in Las Vegas called the Downtown Project, where they're trying to revitalize downtown Las Vegas, which is the part of Las Vegas which is not the Strip, into this most creative city in the U.S. So it's this classic kind of geek thing of turning lemons into lemonade, or engaging in SimCity in real life. He's using money from the sale to Zappos to Amazon for this. In terms of the vision, for the first year, we're hoping that we'll have about 1,500 registrants for the event. Long term, Las Vegas has the advantage that it's got a ton of hotel rooms. So, you know, in 10 years, maybe this event could be half as big as what we're doing in Austin. Maybe it would also have a music component and a film component. But who knows? I mean, I think that, you know, that first slide of patience leads to profits. The other key there is ability to pivot. And we think we understand what Las Vegas is now. I think that after we do the first Las Vegas event, or after we do the first two, we may realize that Las Vegas is completely different and pivot to something slightly different there. But, you know, ultimately, it will be a challenge doing something outside of our home turf. We tried this 15 years ago, we tried to do an event in Portland, Oregon. We tried to do an event in St. Louis, Missouri. Neither of those worked. There's also an event called North and Northeast in Toronto, which has been marginally successful, but not as successful as the Austin stuff. So, yeah, I think we've got a pretty good system and idea of what we do in Austin. Doing it outside Austin is a big challenge.
You mentioned some of the infrastructure challenges here in Austin. How have you reached out and engaged the leadership here?
Well, great question. I mean, again, South by Southwest was started by the brain trust behind the Austin Chronicle, which is the weekly here in Austin. These guys are a bunch of old hippies, and many, many years they didn't want anything to do with the city. The city didn't want anything to do with them. That said, you know, over the last 10 years, we have significantly increased our cooperation and are working with the city government, with the Chamber of Commerce, with the police department. I mean, the scale of the event, there's simply no way that we can't work with these entities to try to mitigate all the scaling problems that we have in Austin. 2 summers ago, we did 2 week-long seminars during July and August about crowd control. We had people from South by Southwest there. We had people from city government, from the police department, from the fire department. We were trying to find solutions or you know, brainstorming planning for worst-case situations. We hope never happen, but we're a little bit more prepared to deal with those now. So, I mean, again, I think that we've worked much more closely with these governmental entities over the last few years. One of the things that we tried to work with in Austin is creating somewhat of a clean zone during the event, which would help from our standpoint, help mitigate some of the guerrilla events that occur during South by Southwest and overcrowd the downtown area. I've had some success with the city in working on that, but that's kind of an ongoing mission.
One of our biggest clients is Procter & Gamble, and they're always trying to say, like, how can you get us in there, how can we participate? So we're always thinking about that. But from your perspective, how do you manage it not becoming too much of a branded event where people don't think it feels too commercial, actually?
That is a great question also. We have, the event, I think one of the reasons it's grown a lot in the last few years is we've gotten these larger brands coming to Austin, and they want to be a part of this. They want to interact with these first adopters, these trendsetters that are here at the event. And I think we have, generally been very cooperative in working with these brands. And personally, I mean, I have some reluctance on that. In 2012 and 2013, during South by Southwest Music, there is a restaurant across the street from the convention center called Carmelo's. Got a big parking lot. In the last 2 years, there's been a 6-story, that's 6 stories, that's way up there, Doritos vending machine, which is, I mean, I really worked my whole life to sell Doritos, and not, I love Doritos, but in my mind, and what I always stress my staff is that South by Southwest is a really big tent. I am fine with Doritos, I'm fine with any brand that wants to have a place here, as long as on the other side of the tent, we can do nonprofit stuff, stuff that emphasizes how you can use technology to improve the lot of third world countries and people who are, level of playing field between the haves and the have-nots. So I am fine with that, massive branding stuff, as long as we can do, kind of this other stuff on the other side to offset that. And, again, I think we've worked pretty closely with the other brands that want to be involved with the event. And really, I mean, try to encourage the brands to have any kind of activations that are tasteful, so to speak. Whether the Doritos things falls into that, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like the Mark Zuckerberg keynote. It is so so obnoxious and so kind of ostentatious that it is gotten a lot of buzz that way. So there you go.
I just actually have one follow-up. So what would make you say no to the brand?
What would make us say no to a brand? I mean, it's certainly on a case-by-case basis. One, we really try to have brands that are involved with, in some way involved with our 3 component events, being interactive, music, film. So, for instance, Trojan Common Company wanted to do a big promotion here. And I think we said no on them because we just did not feel that was, and they were saying we're a technology company. Our definitions of technology are pretty vague, but maybe not that vague. So again, trying to have some kind of tie-in, and as well trying to make it, work with the brand to make for an experience that will be a win-win for them and for our audience. I mean, our audience, within our audience, there's certainly a degree of backlash against these big brands, and we don't want that. We want the audience to say, "Great, I had this great interaction with this brand, and I'm now a big fan." We've worked with Chevy for the last 4 or 5 years, and one of the things that Chevy does is they have this Catch a Ride program where they have Chevrolets that will take people around, and that turns out to be this great service. Again, transportation is really difficult in Austin, so if someone can catch a ride with a Chevrolet to get to a venue that we need to get to, wow, that creates a good point of communication, and that's a win-win, I think, for everybody.
One final question. Many of us plan events on a much smaller scale, and we even feel like by the time we get to it, we don't get to enjoy it. So we want to know, what do you do as it's going on? Do you get to enjoy it?
Well, 2 responses there. First of all, I mean, my experience is that there's generally the same level of stress whether you're planning an event for 15 people or 150 people or 15,000 people. It's not like, or at least in my experience, it's not like it scales up. If there's the same amount of stress, you're still waking up the same amount of time. So it doesn't make a whole lot of difference there. In terms of what myself or other staff people, how we enjoy doing it, we're definitely, see the event from a different perspective than attendees do. I don't get to attend much, whether it's during interactive, whether it's during music. But I think the thing that, that you get out of it as an organizer, which is very intoxicating, is you feel this energy coming to town. You have people come up to you and say, wow, I had this great week. You have people come up and say, email afterwards, I had this great week, I met this person, we're now engaged, or I got, I landed this huge contract at the event. So you kind of experience the event vicariously, and again, come back to that concept of energy. It's this great way. I mean, Austin's a very, very creative city 52 weeks of the year, but for that 1 week, it just is creativity on steroids. There's so many very, very creative people here. There's just a palpable energy. You mix that in with the whole metaphor of spring and rebirth and this nice weather. The plants are coming out, the flowers are in bloom, and it's pretty neat.
Thank you very much. I think I
Yeah.
speak for the group to say. I do want to say too, Martin and I had the pleasure of meeting you the other morning, and a couple of people asked, what's it like? And I just want to say that when you meet somebody from a brand that is perceived to be too cool for most of us, it's a real pleasure to find out there are people who are sincere and nice and humble behind this brand. So it's been a real pleasure getting to meet you as well.
Thanks for the